Story 1. The Phantom Piper of Dalhousie Castle. When I first arrived at Dalhousie Castle, just outside Edinburgh, Scotland, I was instantly struck by its grandeur. With its imposing stone walls, towers, and centuries-old charm, the castle seemed to whisper stories of a time long past. As the oldest continuously inhabited castle in Scotland, dating back to the 13th century, it was once the stronghold of the Ramsay clan, and now serves as a luxury hotel filled with history and mystery. But my visit wasn't just about admiring its medieval architecture or learning about noble families. I came for something far more chilling: the legend of the Phantom Piper, a mysterious spirit said to haunt the castle's ancient halls. As I entered through the great stone archway, under flickering torchlight and the gaze of old portraits, I felt a deep chill that had little to do with the cold Scottish air. The castle felt alive, its walls heavy with secrets. That first night, I dined in the castle's atmospheric dungeon restaurant, where the stone walls and dim lighting created the perfect setting for a ghost story. Midway through dinner, something strange happened. A low, sorrowful sound began to rise, bagpipes distant but distinct, echoing softly through the thick stone walls. At first, I assumed it was simply part of the ambiance, recorded music to enhance the Scottish experience, but I soon noticed the waitstaff exchanging uneasy glances. After dinner, I approached one of them and casually asked about the music. His response was cautious. There was no music scheduled for the evening, and certainly no bagpipers on the grounds. He admitted that many guests and staff had heard the same haunting tune over the years, always without explanation. The mysterious bagpipes weren't a new phenomenon. People had reported hearing them for decades, especially at night. The sound seemed to drift from the upper floors or down hidden corridors, as though the castle itself was remembering its past. Fascinated, I began asking more questions. Other guests told me stories, accounts of being awoken in the night by the eerie sound of pipes, and of seeing a shadowy figure in Highland dress wandering the halls. One guest from Australia described peeking into the hallway after hearing the music, only to see a ghostly piper standing alone, playing with sorrowful intensity, his face obscured by darkness. When she stepped into the corridor, he vanished into thin air. These were not isolated stories. Multiple guests described the same thing: a lone piper, a sad melody, a cold presence. The spirit, it seemed, wasn't malicious, but there was sadness in every note he played. Some of the castle staff believed the piper could have been a musician from centuries ago, perhaps someone who once served the Ramsay family and died tragically within the castle walls. Others speculated he was a soldier who had perished during battle and returned to play for the home he could never truly leave. Driven by these tales, I decided to spend a night exploring. I chose the ancient chapel, said to be one of the most haunted spots in the castle and a place where the piper was often heard. Armed with a camera and an audio recorder, I waited in the cold silence as the hours passed. Then, just as midnight struck, the sound began. Clear, beautiful, and deeply melancholic. Bagpipes. The melody filled the chapel like smoke, swirling through the air. I turned toward the stained glass window, and there he was, the Phantom Piper. He stood tall, dressed in traditional Highland regalia, his eyes closed as he played with haunting emotion. The air around him shimmered slightly, as if he existed in a different time. Slowly I approached. As I neared, he opened his eyes and met my gaze. There was something in them, a sorrow, perhaps a plea. Then he stopped playing. The last note hung in the air for a long moment. He gave a slow, solemn nod, as if saying farewell, and faded away before my eyes. The experience left me shaken. I had come searching for a story, and I had found a ghost. The next morning, I returned to retrieve my audio recorder. What it captured was astonishing. Hours of silence. And then, just before dawn, the unmistakable sound of bagpipes. Even more shocking, the video function had switched on, recording a faint translucent figure playing in the chapel. As the sun rose, the figure gradually faded into the morning light. The evidence was undeniable. The phantom piper of Dalhousie Castle was not just legend, he was real. Since that night, the castle has embraced its ghostly fame. The story of the piper is now part of official tours where guides speak of the sightings and recordings. Themed events feature live pipers playing mournful tunes in the very halls where the phantom is said to roam. Guests now come not only for luxury and history, but in hopes of hearing that sorrowful melody echo through the halls. For many, the spirit of the piper adds a mystical charm to their stay. Dalhousie Castle remains a bridge between the ancient past and the present, and the phantom piper, forever playing his mournful tune, is now part of its soul. Story 2. Room 237, The Lock Room Mystery. When a historian took a new job as a guide at the historic Stanley Hotel in the Colorado Rockies, he quickly became intrigued by the mystery surrounding one particular room, Room 237. Unlike the other grand and welcoming parts of the hotel, this room was sealed off, not open to guests, and deeply embedded in the hotel's eerie reputation. Staff whispered about ghostly voices and unexplained sounds that came from behind its locked door, and even walking past it gave people chills. It was said that Stephen King had been inspired by this very room when writing The Shining, lending it both fame and fear. Despite the allure of the hotel's luxurious setting, Room 237 remained a shadow over the building's history, an enigma left untouched for decades. The new guide, drawn by both curiosity and a sense of duty, felt compelled to understand what truly lay behind that closed door. Everything changed when a new general manager, Mr. Clark, took charge. A skeptic with no patience for ghost stories, he viewed Room 237's closure as a missed business opportunity. During a staff meeting, he announced his decision to reopen the room, dismissing the hotel's haunted tales as outdated nonsense. Some employees were intrigued, while others, especially the veterans, looked uneasy. When the locksmith finally changed the locks and opened Room 237, the air that spilled out was cold and stale. The interior looked untouched, preserved like a time capsule from another era. Though nothing immediately alarming was visible, a feeling of unease settled over everyone who stepped near it. Soon after it was made available for guests, reports of strange events began flooding in. The first couple who stayed in the room asked to switch rooms within hours, claiming the mirrors reflected figures that weren't them. They also described hearing faint whispering in the middle of the night, voices they couldn't understand, but that clearly weren't their own. As more guests checked in, odd incidents continued. Malfunctioning key cards, flickering lights, and in one case, a total blackout of the hotel after a guest claimed to see a shadowy figure walk through the closed bathroom door. The staff became increasingly disturbed, and rumors began to resurface with new urgency. The guide began compiling these stories and interviewing guests, building a chilling record of unexplained phenomena linked to Room 237. Despite all this, Mr. Clark refused to believe. He blamed faulty equipment or overactive imaginations. That is until a professional historian arrived, determined to investigate Room 237 thoroughly. Armed with audio and video equipment, the man checked into the room on a stormy night, intent on uncovering the truth. As the night wore on, the room grew unnaturally cold, and his equipment started to fail, batteries drained, and cameras powered off on their own. At midnight, he captured the sound of a piano playing a sorrowful tune, which led him to the bathroom. Inside, he saw a woman reflection in the mirror, her face frozen in silent agony, before it vanished completely. Research revealed that a woman had died in that room decades earlier under mysterious circumstances. The historian believed he had witnessed her spirit reliving her final moments. Shaken but unharmed, he left the room at dawn, and his audio recordings provided undeniable evidence. When Mr. Clark heard the audio and saw the historian's detailed report, he finally accepted that room 237 might be more than just a story. Concerned for the safety of guests, Mr. Clark made the decision to close the room permanently. A plaque was placed outside detailing its haunted past, turning it into a historical exhibit rather than a guest accommodation. While some guests were disappointed, many appreciated the respectful decision to let the room and its lingering spirit rest. Then came a final twist. Shortly after the room was sealed again, the original old-fashioned key to room 237 went missing from Mr. Clark's office. It was never found. Some believed the spirit had reclaimed it, ensuring no one would disturb her again. Today, room 237 remains locked. Its door stands as a silent symbol of the unknown, and the story continues to be told during hotel tours, reminding visitors that while legends can be entertaining, some may be all too real. Story 3. The Watcher in the Window. The Skirrid Mountain Inn, nestled in the Brecon Beacons of Wales, is one of the oldest pubs in the country. Its history stretches back over 900 years, and its walls hold tales of rebellion, executions, and ghostly occurrences. Known for its chilling past, it has long been a magnet for paranormal enthusiasts. The inn was once a court where over 180 people were sentenced to death, and it was a gathering place for Welsh rebels. Despite its storied history, it was the ghostly legend of the Watcher in the Window that intrigued me most. This tale spoke of a mysterious figure, a man dressed in 17th century attire, who appeared in the window of room 321. Guests who saw him reported feeling uneasy, as if he were guarding some long-kept secret of the inn. I decided to stay in room 321, hoping to uncover the truth behind the ghostly apparition. As I entered the inn, the low beams and timber frame walls instantly transported me to another time. The atmosphere was thick with history, and I could feel the weight of centuries pressing down on me. That evening, as I settled into my room and reviewed some notes, I saw something move in the window. A figure appeared in the reflection, dressed in old-fashioned clothing, his gaze fixed intensely on something unseen. He wore a high-collared coat and a brimmed hat, and there was something unsettling about his presence. When I turned to look behind me, no one was there. The room was empty save for the creaking of the old building. I turned back to the window, but the figure was gone, leaving me to wonder if I had imagined it. As the days passed, other guests reported similar sightings. What was more unnerving was that the Watcher seemed to try to communicate. One guest heard faint knocking from the direction of the window, and when she checked, she found the Watcher pointing towards the door of her room. Outside, she discovered a scarf she had dropped earlier. Another guest found a note on the windowsill written in Welsh, warning of an incoming storm. I, too, experienced strange phenomena. Every time I tried to capture the Watcher on camera, my equipment malfunctioned. It only started working again when I turned away from the window, as if the Watcher didn't want to be documented. The atmosphere at the inn shifted from fascination to fear. The Watcher was no longer just a ghostly figure. He seemed like an active presence, aware of the living and intent on protecting them. One stormy night, the Watcher appeared again, his movements more urgent than before. He pointed toward the staircase leading down to the main lobby. I followed his direction, and as I reached the staircase, I smelled smoke. I rushed to the lounge and found a small fire had started, likely caused by a candle knocked over by the draft. The staff were already there, managing the flames, and the fire was quickly contained. If not for the watcher's warning, the situation could have escalated quickly. It was clear to me now that the watcher was not malevolent, but protective. Intrigued, I dug into the inn's history and uncovered the story of the previous owner, Thomas Griffiths. Griffiths had disappeared years ago under mysterious circumstances. He was known for his deep affection for the inn and its guests, particularly the room where the watcher was often seen. One stormy night, Griffiths went to check on the property's condition and was never seen again. Despite a thorough search, he was presumed lost to the elements. His body never found. Griffiths' appearance in photographs closely resembled the watcher's, and I began to suspect that the watcher might be his spirit, continuing his duty even from beyond the grave. This revelation brought a sense of closure to the staff and regulars at the inn. The watcher was no longer a mere curiosity. He was seen as a guardian, a beloved figure watching over the inn. However, after the fire, the watcher's appearances stopped. Room 321 seemed like any other room in the inn, and despite efforts to honor Griffiths, the watcher never returned. The absence of his presence brought both relief and unease. Guests began to report small accidents and mishaps, and there was a general sense that something important was missing. It felt as though a protective force had disappeared. Despite attempts to encourage the watcher's return, including restoring Griffith's belongings and holding a small ceremony in his memory, the figure never appeared again. Yet some guests and staff still felt his presence, as if he were watching over the inn in a more subtle, unseen way. Even in his absence, the watcher's legacy remained, and his protective influence was felt in ways that could not be explained. The story of the watcher in the window had gone from being a chilling legend to a symbol of the inn's deep history and the unwavering protection it offered. While the figure no longer appeared, his influence persisted, guarding the inn in ways unseen but ever felt. The mystery of the watcher may never be fully explained, but his place in the inn's legacy was secured, watching over the guests, even in death, with a silent but enduring vigilance. Story 4. The Crying Bride of the Grand Hotel Excelsior. Vittoria. The Grand Hotel Excelsior, Vittoria, perched on a cliffside overlooking the Bay of Naples, is a symbol of timeless elegance and historic charm. Its panoramic views, terrace gardens, and opulent interiors have made it a sought-after destination for couples and honeymooners. The Orchid Suite, in particular, is renowned for its luxurious decor and stunning sea views, making it the epitome of romance. However, beneath the hotel's beauty lies a mysterious and tragic story, a legacy of love and loss that haunts its halls. During my stay at the hotel, I was intrigued by stories surrounding the Orchid Suite, especially the reports of eerie occurrences. The concierge, a seasoned hotel employee, told me of guests who had reported hearing faint weeping coming from the suite during times when it was unoccupied. The crying was often accompanied by a strange coldness, even in summer. Skeptical but curious, I arranged to spend a night in the Orchid Suite to investigate these claims. That night, as I settled into the luxurious suite, I began to hear the soft, sorrowful sobbing that had become a part of the hotel's eerie lore. The sound was chilling, filled with a profound sadness. Over the next few days, the haunting intensified. Guests and staff reported seeing strange reflections of a bride in mirrors throughout the hotel. The bride was always seen from behind, her head bowed in sorrow. These sightings were not limited to the Orchid Suite, but occurred in various parts of the hotel, leaving guests both fascinated and frightened. One evening, a guest described seeing the bride in the grand mirror of the lobby. When she turned to confront the figure, there was nothing but the usual hotel bustle behind her. Other guests shared similar stories of encountering the spectral bride. The hotel management, though concerned, found themselves intrigued, realizing that the tales of the ghostly bride were attracting more attention, though they feared it might unsettle guests. Determined to uncover the truth, I spent several more nights roaming the hotel. Eventually, I too saw the apparition. Passing by a mirror in a dimly lit corridor, I glimpsed the bride's figure, just as others had described. The sight was haunting but strangely mesmerizing. The reflection vanished as quickly as it had appeared, leaving a lingering sense of sadness in the air. The most profound encounter occurred when a newlywed couple checked into the Orchid Suite. They were initially excited by the luxury and beauty of the suite, but their excitement soon turned to unease as they began to hear the soft weeping that had become associated with the room. One night, unable to sleep due to the eerie sounds, the bride noticed the shimmering figure of the crying bride in the suite's full-length mirror. The apparition stared at her with a sorrowful gaze, her hand outstretched toward the glass. The groom approached the mirror, and as he did, the ghost's lips seemed to move, though no sound could be heard. The temperature in the room dropped, and a cold breeze swept through the curtains before the apparition faded away. The experience deeply affected the couple, who reported the incident to hotel management. Their story was similar to many others, and it led to an investigation into the history of the Orchid Suite and the identity of the ghostly bride. Hotel management dug into the hotel's historical records and uncovered a tragic story that had been all but forgotten. Many years ago, a young bride named Isabella was set to marry at the hotel in the late 1800s. On the morning of her wedding, her groom mysteriously disappeared. Overcome with grief, Isabella was found dead in her bridal suite later that night. The cause of death was ruled to be heartbreak and despair. Her tragic story explained the haunting that had plagued the Orchid Suite. It seemed that Isabella's spirit had been trapped in a cycle of sorrow, unable to move on from the loss of her groom. Her cries and sightings were manifestations of her unresolved grief and her eternal wait for the one she had lost. In an effort to bring peace to her spirit, the hotel management decided to honor Isabella's memory by acknowledging her story. They began including it in their brochures and dedicated the Orchid Suite to her, hoping that this gesture would help her spirit find closure. Following the hotel's recognition of Isabella's story, guests reported a subtle shift in the atmosphere of the Orchid Suite. While occasional sightings and faint weeping continued, the occurrences were described as less sorrowful and more wistful, as though Isabella's spirit had been soothed by the recognition of her tale. The haunting presence in the suite seemed to have transformed into something gentler and more peaceful. Several weeks later, the newlywed couple returned to the hotel for their first anniversary. They were drawn back by a sense of connection to Isabella and the mysterious events they had experienced during their honeymoon. While staying in the suite, they accidentally dropped an item under the bed. While searching for it, the groom found an old ring box tucked in a shadowy corner. Inside the box was a delicate gold wedding ring with a tear-shaped diamond. The couple brought the ring to the hotel management, who were baffled by the discovery. An examination of the ring revealed an inscription inside the band. "Forever yours, Isabella." It was likely the ring Isabella had been meant to wear on her wedding day. The ring had never been listed in the hotel's lost and found records, adding to the mystery of its sudden appearance. Many believed the discovery of the ring provided the closure Isabella's spirit needed. After its revelation, reports of weeping and sightings in the Orchid Suite gradually diminished. Guests who stayed in the suite after the ring's discovery spoke of a calm and gentle presence in the room. The once haunting atmosphere had shifted, leaving behind a sense of peace. The hotel, now known for its poignant story of love and loss, continued to honor Isabella's memory. The crying bride of the Grand Hotel, Excelsior Vittoria, became a tale of remembrance and reconciliation, reminding all who visited that sometimes acknowledgement and recognition can bring peace to restless spirits.